growing up, I grew up like a lot of y'all. I knew my grandparents and my great-grandparents on one side at least. I grew up with them. Grew up in a good home, went to good, worked hard in schools, was taught those values. I was good in science and math. And so when you're good at science and math, you're go to be an engineer. And I had no idea what that meant, but I did what I was supposed to do. And so I go off to engineering school, and I'm right in the middle of the class. Like if there's a bell-shaped curve, I'm 50th percentile. Right? I'm not the worst, but I'm definitely not the brightest. And I said, well, I really got to figure this out. I got to figure out how to make this head knowledge, this book knowledge that they're giving me, like what does it mean in the real world? So I go on called a co-op where you take a summer and a semester, and you just work as an engineer. And so I took a job. And what I did is I took a job that was local to the college, and it paid a lot less than some of the other internship opportunities that you'd have to go away for. But what it did is it made this co-op that was supposed to be 8 months last a year and a half, because then when I was in college, I kept working. And suddenly, even though I'm right in the middle of the class, when I graduate, I get some of the best offers of the whole class because I have a year and a half of experience. And so I had an offer to work for Boeing on their 777 program. I had an offer to work, that was in Seattle, and my mom cried. Because from Miami to Seattle, I think that's as far as you could go in the continental U.S. And so I had another offer in the Northeast for General Dynamics to work on nuclear submarines. And I had an offer to work locally at the company I was working at, making these plastic parts for automobiles and appliances. Then I had an offer from Procter & Gamble to make diapers. And let me tell you, when you're an engineer and you're talking with your friends, like, where you go, oh, I'm going to work on subs, I'm going to work on planes. Like, you don't want to say I'm going to work on diapers. Like, it's just... But then I also thought, like, man, that's a lot of pressure, working on airplanes, working on nuclear subs. Like, the least amount of damage I could do is working on diaper machines. And then 10 years later, I became a dad, and I realized how catastrophic it could be if they're not designed or put on right. So Procter & Gamble, I worked in Pennsylvania, and it's a small town, but it was the biggest plant in this $30 billion company 25 years ago. This small plant because they also made Bounty and Charmin there, and paper mills and paper plants have to be on water sources, and there's the Susquehanna River in this small town in Pennsylvania. And that year at this 2,000-person plant, they hired 25 new engineers like me. It was a blast. You're there with all these young professionals, and you're in a cool area because I love outdoors, I love rural areas, I love all that. But it was highly, highly competitive because all of us were vying for the next best job, the next promotion, to get ahead, to be viewed the best. You wanted to be on the best tours, the best projects. You wanted a raise, you wanted a promotion, you wanted a career path. And that's what I was training to do my whole life. And so I just got into that drive. And then I was actually asked to be a part of the biggest project the plant had had for the last 10 years because they were changing over all their equipment. It would involve multiple trips to Germany and all over the country. And I was chosen for it. Not because I was the best. I was probably right in the middle again. The reason I was chosen for it was because the project lead was known for two things: working extremely hard, but partying even harder. And he needed to assemble a team that could travel with him and keep up with him on both sides. That we could be out all night, doing what you do when you're out all night, but then make sure you're in work at 6:30 in the morning the next day to do that. And so in other words, my resume fit that. And I'm not proud of this, guys. I don't share this all the time. And so then my personal life started to mirror my professional life, trying to get that next high, that next adventure, that next thing. I had money, all the money I needed so I could buy whatever I wanted. And whatever I had, I just wanted the next thing. Wherever I traveled and went, I just wanted the next thing. Whatever party I was at, I wanted the next party. Whatever project I was on, I wanted the next project. It was insatiable. Two bosses up asked me one day, so my boss's boss looked at me and says, well, George, what do you want out of this job? Because he saw I was just like, it's like, I just want the biggest, the best thing you got. That's what I want to be on. And he said, well, you're going to be disappointed because you're on the biggest project we've had in 10 years and there's nothing coming along like that. And one day I woke up and I was just lost. I recognized it. What am I searching after? What am I hungering after? It's that Isaiah 55 passage. I'm spending my money on things that don't satisfy. And God has all this for me for free. That actually requires rest, not work. And so I left it all. Now I moved in with my parents, so that makes my mom happy. But then my dad's trying to understand what I'm going to do with this mountain of debt and the degree, and just go be a bum in my parents' house. I heard the voice of the shepherd. And I know that I don't know exactly, I didn't know how to put it together at the time. I knew it was God calling me out of that. Not out of being an engineer. I loved being an engineer. But what it did to me, the idolatrous behavior that had raised up in me of trying to seek satisfaction in my personal life and in my professional life by my accomplishments, was eating me alive. See, I would have said I was a Christian because what I understood was that I was a sinner in need of saving and only Jesus Christ could do that. But I lived under this constant shadow of an angry God every time I sinned. So I would sin. I liked to sin. And I would feel God's displeasure. And so what would I try to do? Rather than turn in repentant faith and ask the Lord to give me the heart that I need to be his child, what would I do is I would just try to be better. See, God, I did something good now to pay back for what I just did. It's a yo-yo theology. You're in God's grace, you're in his displeasure. You're in his grace, and of course it's just delusional. And it was only when I came to realize what the gospel truly was, that yes, I am a sinner that needs saving by grace through faith, not my own doing, it's the gift of God. I'm a sinner that needs saving, and Jesus on the cross is the good shepherd who laid down his life for me, who took the penalty that I would have deserved. But it's more than that. It's that he makes me his child. He makes me his sheep. He brings me into his kingdom. It changes everything. Then I'm not trying to please an angry God. I'm just trying to live in light of my salvation, in the freedom that he offers. I want what my Father wants for me, which is to stop trying to be satisfied in other things. That's what sin is. Trying to be satisfied in what I want instead of what the shepherd wants for me. Shepherd is leading me into green pastures and I'm trying to eat in wastelands. Do I want what he wants for me? In Luke 12:32, after Luke goes through, Matthew does this in his gospel too, but Luke has this line. After it's this whole don't be afraid of what you'll eat, don't be anxious for your life or about anything. Don't worry about that. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So much packed in one verse. 3 things. You're a little flock, which makes you what? A sheep, which makes him what? The good shepherd. It's your Father's good pleasure, which makes you his child. To give you the kingdom, which means he's the king. That's why Matthew says, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Lay your burdens on me. And because of that, I'm compelled to rest from my striving, from my wandering, from my exhaustion. I rest in Christ because he is the good shepherd and he is the bread of life. He invites us to come to him. I've heard his voice and I know who he is. He's the one that gives me rest and he satisfies the deepest longings of my heart. It goes back to that great quote from Augustine from his Confessions, who was a famous wanderer. Our hearts are restless, O Lord, until they find their rest in you. Have you found that rest? Have you stopped your wandering? If you haven't, you're invited to today.